This is IA Forward, your playbook for success as an independent insurance agent. Here to help you knock it out of the ballpark are your hosts, Shane Tatum and Tonya Lead.
Welcome to IA Forward. Shane, I am so proud of the cute boy in I.
You're always proud of the cute boy in you, as you should be, as you should be. But what is it today?
So we had our 21-year-old nephew and his fiance came in to hang with us over the weekend. And we've noticed that as adults come in and visit us, that they're always tired. Like they'll say, we want to do this and plan this and tell us what to do. And they're always tired. And we're always like, let's go and let's do this. And so we out-hung the 21-year-olds. They're in there napping and we're going, what's going on? And I was so proud that after 4 days, like they had to nap 3 out of the 4 days and they were ready for bed before we were.
I have an opposite story. I had a wedding to attend on this past Friday evening, and of course, a young couple, and so proud of this young couple. Wonderful wedding. I actually had a daughter that was in the wedding as a bridesmaid. After the wedding ceremony, of course, there is a reception. The excitement was carrying on into the latter hours of the evening, 9:30, 10 o'clock. They leave. Basically, I get to bed about midnight, all right? And we are out of town in a hotel. We sleep in. We grab breakfast. We head back home. We get home, and Julie and I literally crashed on the couch with a nap that was one of those naps where you're not really sure where you are when you wake up. And I haven't napped like that in years. Totally opposite of what you did and the cute boy was able to do in your energy staying up and ready to go. We were the polar opposite of that this past weekend, where it took us a couple of days.
I'm not quite sure how this leads into our podcast topic for today. But anyway, all of that being said, are you awake now?
I am awake. I'm ready to go. I have come out of the weekend and this event fully rested now. If you tried to talk to me on Saturday afternoon, you weren't going to get much.
Let's talk conflict today. We have alluded to the conflicts going on in the world in a few of our recent podcasts. But with it being an election year, with this 24-hour news cycle, with so much going on in the world affecting our insurance market in such a negative way, let's talk about that conflict and how it's affecting us and the past, the present, and the future.
This is excellent topic for today. I just recently gave a speech or talk to our local Chamber of Commerce, and it was an abbreviated version of a presentation that I did at our annual partner conference back in April. And I have to give full credit of awareness to this really conversation and presentation to Travelers Insurance. And there was a conference that I was invited to where I got to listen to a fireside chat type conversation between the CEO of Travelers and a man by the name of Dr. Richard Haas. Dr. Haas is a career diplomat, has dealt with just all kinds of peace negotiations, country to country diplomacy, has worked on and in both major political parties, has been neutral with think tanks, just has an incredible career around conflict resolution and dealing with conflict. And one of the things that was really interesting to me when I heard Dr. Haas speak was that we think we deal with conflict with relationships, with clients, with whatever. This guy dealt with conflict at a much, much greater level in his life. And it's one of those really interesting takes that you take your perspective and then you understand another perspective, maybe from this crazy world of whether we're dealing with tribal issues within countries, whether we're dealing with countries that hate other countries, whether we're dealing with everyone hating the U.S., whatever the situation is, that when you're dealing with it with people who will go to war over things, there's obviously a little different level of situation rather than this person said something mean to me or this person's tone didn't come across right. It was really mesmerizing to me to listen to this conversation and understand some parallels of where we are today versus what was really brought up to my attention that really had its beginnings in the late 60s into the early 70s and then through the 90s. And so there's a lot of comparisons there, and there's a lot of opportunity for us to grow in conflict resolution through understanding some things in the past.
That was a lot for me to absorb, just to let you know. And in case that was a lot for some of our listeners to absorb, let's talk a little bit of specificity.
Probably pretty accurate for us to say we certainly live in an age of conflict.
100%.
100%. And we're going to come at this from pretty good neutral footing, in my opinion. People tend to hear what they want to hear, which is actually one of the things about being better at conflict resolution is really listen, like truly listen. Don't just act like you're listening, but really listen and try to understand. The topic and really the example that was given was around what's called the Troubles. And you can look that up. There's a great article on Wikipedia about it. The Troubles really centered around the conflict in Northern Ireland. It had Northern Ireland, the UK, and really it was centered around this conflict between Catholics and Protestants. I'm not a historian. Feel free to fact check me. But this conflict lasted over 3 decades. And it ended with the Easter Accords. In the middle of all this, there is Bloody Sunday, which was probably brought to light to some generations by the U2 song, which was written about Bloody Sunday, which was part of this long-standing conflict. It was at the core, a disagreement on religious purposes, Catholic versus Protestant. But then there's other people that say, no, it was about someone occupying a place where others felt like they shouldn't have been. And it was about occupy, which sounds very familiar today, whether you're dealing with Israel and Hamas or Palestinian or whatever the situation becomes. There are many different places around the globe today where we could basically change names, change geographic settings, and things look a lot alike. And this is one of those. And in my presentation, I have a picture from Northern Ireland in 1967, and then I have a picture of Philadelphia for 2020. And the pictures, other than one being in black and white and one being in color, the pictures are almost identical. What we see is that there are so many similarities to what was going on in the late 60s that carried on through 3 decades to what we have been seeing over the last 4 to 5 years at a minimum in the U.S., probably go back about 8 years. You got to go back across a couple of administrations. And it is this movement from a mass in the center to 2 masses on the left and the right, and the hollowing out of the bell curve. And so for years, you look at belief systems and you look at the way people thought and saw the world, and it looked like a bell curve, an inverted bell curve. And you had the extremes on the left and you had the extremes on the right. And really you could count on that middle 80% being pretty closely aligned with the center. And yet today we see more and more of that getting hollowed out, and there being movement away from the center and movement from some in the center to the left and some in the center to the right. And you end up with this divide. You end up with this huge divide that's going on in our country, in our political system, in our just everyday life. And Dr. Haas wrote a book, and I don't agree with 100% of the things in this book, but the book was called The Bill of Obligations, obviously taken off the Bill of Rights. It's this idea that we have obligations as citizens as well. It's not just about rights, it's about obligations. It's about both. This is just the general overview of what we can see in history, where the coming together, the compromise, the seeing things in the lens of the other person's view, we are not doing that very well in today's world.
Do you think that we're really further and further apart? Or do you think that some people just have louder voices due to social media and a 24-hour news cycle, and it's making us believe that the divide is bigger?
It's not as bad as we probably think it is, to your point, but it's more, and it is a gravitation away from the center because of the 24-hour news cycle, because of the social media effect. So no, it's not as bad as social media and the news cycle would have you think it is, but it is worse than it used to be. So I was recently at a different industry event with some other agency networks and had dinner and was able to have some great conversations. And one of those conversations happened to be with an agency network where this individual, it's not necessarily where the agency network's located, but it's where the individual is located. She was located in Seattle, just outside of Seattle. And Seattle is a place that is dear to me because I served for, probably over 6 years on the Safeco National Agency Council back in the late 2000s and then through 2013. Spent a lot of time in Seattle for about a 5 or 6 year stretch there. An incredible time in my life, career, and we fell in love with Seattle. And so when things started happening with the Occupy movement and things started happening in 2020, 2021 around that Occupy world, and Seattle was one of the major metro areas that was hit with that. It broke my heart that Seattle was hurt as a community, as a city, and this separation happened. And I just asked the question, like, how is Seattle? Tell me that it's okay. And her explanation was, it's not as bad as the world has made you think it is. That's generally the consensus that I hear wherever I ask that question. That was refreshing to me. And that is a wonderful thing to hear.
Ultimately, Shane, what does all of this mean for me as an independent agency owner?
As business owners, we're going to deal with conflict with our employees. We're going to deal with conflict at times with our customers. We're going to deal with conflict with our partners, like our carriers and our vendors. It becomes one of those things that we have an opportunity as leaders to rise above that and be better at how to deal with conflict. That is the piece as leaders in our community, as business owners in our communities. We have an opportunity to show the world something different. And that's where it matters. And that was the point of the CEO at Travelers at this conference, was that it does matter, that it does affect our economy. And when it affects our economy, it affects our businesses. And to just say, this doesn't affect me, it's just not a true statement. If you own a business and you're a leader in your community, it affects you. So how do we deal with that? And what are some things that we can do to help us be better at that?
I went to a funeral recently, and one of the things that the pastor said about the gentleman who had passed was that he had never heard him say a negative thing about another person. And at first hearing that, I thought, I can't even imagine. And then I got to thinking about over the 20 years that I knew this person, and I could not think of a specific instance where I had ever heard him do that. Now, I don't know if that was just because this was planted in my head or if that was an actuality, but it made me think about, okay, when I went to this person's place of business, how did I feel? And it was one of my happy places. It was a place that I loved going. I went down this direction of, wow, okay, is that a cause and effect? Was that really one of the reasons that I loved going and being in this place? And can you imagine, as a business owner, what your agency would be like if that was the way things happened every day?
Attitude's a choice. We have a choice to wake up every day and decide how our environment is going to look. One of my presentation slides is just, how do we do this? You get up every day, you have a choice to choose your attitude, and you have a choice to decide, am I going to control the things that I can control? There are so many things out of our control. I've talked about this ad nauseum with being an athlete in baseball or softball, and just being able to control the things that you can control. These are my 5 things. Your tone. As a girl dad, I was taught by my daughters through interactions and really failure on my part, and just pleading with my wife to help me understand why that child just ran off into the bedroom crying. Tone. You can say whatever you want to say in the world, and your tone that is wonderful. You can say something wonderful and your tone will kill it. So your tone matters. Respond, don't react. That's number 3. We react a lot in society today, but we rarely respond. It doesn't mean that we need to roll over. Resolving conflict doesn't mean to be a doormat. It doesn't mean to be bullied. It doesn't mean any of that. It actually means the opposite of that. It's finding a path forward. You do that by responding and not reacting. And then 4th, listen, like really listen is really important. And then 5, make it personal. Put yourself in their shoes, which is one of our core values, by the way, in our organization. And if you think about the funeral that Tonya went to and this business owner, probably one of the most enduring legacies that you could have as a business owner is to have that comment. I've never heard this person say anything bad about another individual. That is a really incredible place to be. Most of us fail at that because we get frustrated, or we let words come out of our mouth before we think, or the tone doesn't do what we're trying to say justice, and we get mad about things that we can't control. The Hoosman brothers call this yelling at the wind. Don't yell at the wind. There's nothing you can do. The wind's blowing, and man, you can't stop it. Just deal with it. These are just examples of what I feel like that's at the center of conflict in our world today. And this is how I go about dealing with those, is those 5 things.
Within this market cycle that we have been in for the last 6,273 months or whatever, this idea of conflict resolution is exhausting to me.
It is. Agents are exhausted. You're exhausted because you have dealt with it so much, and you probably have some regrets on not resolving conflict well. We had a customer that was in our retail operation, Main Street agency, and this customer was really mad about their claim situation, and they were wrong. We were faced with, what are we going to do? The customer is berating our people, which I do not accept whatsoever, and we're going to have to figure out a way to solve this problem. I do want to encourage you that no customer is worth losing an employee over. And I would encourage you to fire that customer. I would encourage you to ask that customer to take their business somewhere else. If you reach the brick wall of not being able to find a path forward, it's okay. I believe that protecting your employees, protecting yourself, asking a customer to take their business elsewhere, it's completely fine. And I know as salespeople, this is that thing that is a maturing into business ownership, but as salespeople with a sales mindset, it's really hard. I would rather fire a customer than lose an employee. Those employees are family to us. We spend a lot of time training them. They take care of our customers, and they take care of the majority of our customers very well. In some of those rare instances where I feel like mistakes happen, we own that, we support them, and we move forward. But then you have those really rare situations where the customer is just out of control. Sometimes those people are people you know very well and they surprise you. Don't be afraid to walk away from that. Sometimes that is just what it is. It's part of controlling the controllables. You can control if they're your customer or not, and you can walk away from that.
In that friend situation, I've actually used that and said, look, our friendship is more important to me than our business relationship. And it feels like our business relationship is causing challenges. So I would rather walk away from our business relationship and keep you as a friend than this to become a problem.
That's fantastic. I would really encourage agents to use that approach with friends and with family. We know that family is sometimes the hardest people to do business with. Expectations are unrealistic on you as an agent, and you get the brunt of the easy complaint. It's, for whatever reason, really easy for family members to take a jab at the insurance business or to not see things through the lens that you have to look through. It's something you can use. You can use the same approach that Tonya's talking about. We're family. It's more important that we remain close family members, whatever. And I just think you're going to be better off doing business somewhere else. I can't do this for you. It's great. And I don't think we use that enough in our businesses.
Let's talk a big one, and that is conflict between our team members.
It's important that you not take one side and form an opinion. One of the things we do incorrectly before we really have this experience is we receive a complaint, we receive information that says, so-and-so did something to me or did this thing, and we form right then and there, oh my gosh, that's terrible. We go with some feedback back to the complainer. That doesn't need to happen. You have to get both sides of the story. If there's one thing that being on the school board for 2 terms taught me, is that there's 2 sides and then there's the truth. That's where you want to be. And a lot of times our solution to this has been to get the 2 people together in the room with a supervisor, the direct supervisor, and another leadership level person. And hey, let's discuss this. You said this happened. How do you feel like, is this what happened? Yes or no? Okay, what really happened? Okay, what are we going to do about it? So what we're doing is we're responding, we're not reacting, and we're not allowing things to fester. I love that approach. People get worried about that approach because one person feels like they don't want to meet with that person. That's part of the problem. That's part of the problem with this divide and hollowing out of the middle is people don't want to meet. They just want to bash each other through channels. The other thing is, and this is a little takeaway from the movie We Are Soldiers, we never gripe down. And I really don't want you to gripe across. So if your organization grows, I do not want peer complaining. I want you to complain up. I hope that's vivid enough in your mind in an org chart. If you peer complain, you create drama. If you complain down the org chart, so that's a manager or supervisor complaining down to someone that reports to them in the org chart, in the chain of command, and creating drama within their department because now they're confiding in someone that is an employee of theirs that reports to them. A really easy statement there is to gripe up or complain up. And there's a scene in We Were Soldiers where they talk about this. We develop friendships as organizations grow. We develop relationships. We talk about creating these cultures where there's strong relationships. And that then leads us to that easy slip of talking about one person to another person that is not within the chain of command or within the org chart. That creates probably as much drama and as many problems as anything else in our work environments. And that's something that I would, along with the five items that I cling to with resolving conflict, that's just as important as your organization grows beyond a few people. And even if you just have a few people, it's still really easy for that to happen. If you have as few as 2 and you're the owner and there's 2 people and they're basically a peer to each other and you confide in one about the other or confide in one in areas where you probably shouldn't, then that's going to cause some conflict within even the smallest of organizations.
Shane, what you're saying is Tonya's life tip number 2. And that's there are 3 things in life we cannot change: the truth, the past, and other people. And the only thing that we have any control over is our attitude toward those things.
Completely agree. That is certainly controlling the controllables. I don't want individuals in this niceness kind of revolution that we see out there on social media. I want to be careful. That doesn't mean to be a doormat. That doesn't mean that you don't have a right to an opinion. That's actually the opposite of that. That's the whole point, is that you have the right to stand your ground or to see things how you see them, but you can't stop there. You have to be able to see things through others' eyes, and you have to be able to Tonya's point, to understand that you can't control other people. But how you respond to them, the tone you respond to them, that can change everything. That can allow you to meet at least in the middle to a point of, I don't completely agree with you, but I see what you're saying. That's a path forward. You can work from that. And so many situations in our world today, we never get there. We never stop. And so I encourage you to lead in your community, lead through your business, lead with your employees to let's find our way back to resolving conflict.
I'm going to leave us today with this quote from Carrie Walsh Jennings. In this journey, the fear creeps in from time to time. The hint of that is there because there's an unknown factor to everything. That's true in everyone's life. I don't choose to live there. I let it spark me.
Attitude is still a choice. Make a great one.
Bye, y'all.
Ready to get the ball rolling with your independent agency? Learn more at IntegraAgent.com. That's IntegraAgent.com. Thank you for joining us on IA Forward. Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now or learn more at IAForward.com.